All right, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. On the first page, we have an inventory for you to fill out. There's 6 little categories of questions. All right. And so there's 6 sets of 4. It's important that you see the space in between. That's its own set. So for each set of questions, you need to rank 1 through 4, 1 being most like you, 4 being least like you. So it should look something like this. So if you read these first 4 and you say, yeah, that's all me, you can't put all ones. You have to rank order them. What's most, second, third, and fourth. They all might sound good or they all might sound bad, but you still have to rank order. 1 is most like me, 2, and then you go to the next 4 and you do the same thing. And it's just on this page. So these little 6 sections. So just whatever first comes to you. Don't agonize over it. Just will take a minute or so. You got to do your own. Here, here, here. You just do your own that way. Yeah, I'm done. Pastor. we will go ahead and try to score these. Yeah, how you'll score them is the very first one of each group, add those all together. The very first one of each group, add those all together. Yes. Yeah. And so you take that top number, and there's a circle on page 2. I want you to write that in the top left quadrant of that circle. Just write the number in there small, whatever that is. Oh, no, there you go. We're doing this real quick. We're ranking those 1 through 4 for each category. And then the second one down, I work best alone with others, I solve problems, etc. Add all those second blanks together and write that number in this quadrant, top right quadrant. You need a pen? So when you're finished, you add up and number 1, 2, 3, 4, and clockwise write your number as you add them up. No, you just your number 1. Yeah.
Up there, I'm gonna.
Yeah. For all your first blanks.
First.
Mm-hmm. That's the total for the second blank, third blank, and fourth blank. Yeah. Clockwise, yeah. Going. Copy, and I wrote the test. Yeah, the first blank you add, so your 4, 4, 4, the ones yeah, and you would write, and yeah, yeah, uh-huh. You filled them out that fast? Okay, good job. They got to do all the math. You're better off just doing the one. Who's got everything? Who's got their math all done? Everybody got your math done? All right. And for those of you who are taking longer, that will be revealed why it took you longer. Because you're of a certain type. All right. We'll go ahead and start to go through these, and you have that big circle, so you'll just we'll fill this in As we go, you can write in what notes that you need to help you track with it. But what this is a learning styles inventory. And so it measures, it's a snapshot. It's not a predestination kind of thing. It's not to pigeonhole anyone in a certain area, but it measures your motivation, your personality, and all that, the type of learning you do that you're drawn to, and maybe where you are are going to struggle and where you're going to excel in what type of learning. And so under this first one, you can write the word collaborative. Also, you can write a little bit, there's some imaginative. That's what that type of learning is called. And so if your number here was lowest, that's more like you. And if it's really high, you don't like people. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. 24 would be the highest. Yeah. Okay. These are the kind of people that typically are always asking why. That's the why questions. Why do I need to know this? Why is this important? So who here is in this group? Really? Just one? Three? Four? Wait, the lowest. Yeah. Yeah, you're not in. Yeah. So if your number is low, this would be. So if you're in single digits, you would very much be in this one. Anyone single digits on the first one? Yeah? Okay. 9? Okay. These are our people. Um, very sympathetic, empathy, and what would be since Chloe, since you're no one else really. Okay. That's not bad. Actually, this is a very small percentage of the population. 5-10% of the population will test first in this. So when it comes to learning, Chloe, what's one of your things that you don't like or about school, education? What's one of the challenges for you? Yeah, that's it. Focus. And yeah, it's hard to focus. Yeah, that's not the only one that has that problem, but that's hard to focus. I don't know where Dina went, but she's off the charts in this one as well. Yeah, she's already left. These are the people that love to be assigned to teams and group work, that type of thing. They're usually going to be, there's usually other personality types here that will end up taking the lead. They'll keep the group cohesion is their thing. Um, so they will plan the family reunions. They are very concerned that everyone feels good in the group. Uh, so, all right, let's go over to this second one. Who had a really low number over here besides Curtis? Curtis, and okay, these are analytics, and they're always asking what is the knowledge to be gained here? These are your book people, your library people, your statisticians, your business people, your military people, just the facts, your competitive people, the right answer. They're going after the answer, typically enjoy a lot of detail. The detail is important. Um, so also I'll put up here, this is about 5%. Uh, got about 20% of the people, 15-20% of the populations, and really high analytic. These, school was built for these people. About five. Yeah. Yeah. So who was there again? Curtis, Gabriel, Pat, Jana, both of you. Okay. Was this one low for you? Okay. Right there. And that was the next one, right? Okay. This next one is this next one's about 60 to 70% of us, and it's usually called the common sense group. These are the people that just want to get the thing done. And so they're the how-to people. That's kind of their. There's also military here, blue collar workers. So who's our common sense people? Uh, okay. Yeah, low number. Okay. Really? Okay. Yeah, that's multiple personality disorder. Okay. But yeah, this is by far and the older you get, the more typically you end up here. And then our final one, anyone, this is the lowest. Yeah, okay. You too? Okay. You really? Okay, you're worst. Okay. I meant, yeah. Most people have the highest number here, except you and you. Okay. This is referred, this is called the dynamic, and it's a very small, maybe 3%, 3 to 5%, but they're always asking, what will this become? Very future oriented, vision type. Um, what's next? Yeah, very small. They're very, very future oriented typically. Um, and so, yeah, hard to focus. Our first one, these second ones, actually, the last two, want to challenge is emotional connection. As you can kind of imagine that these are the high, what we think of typical traditional brain, common sense, thinking type things. This other one is much more left brain, collaborative, dynamic, and um, so focus and discipline could be challenges over here. But these are these first two over here, 1 and 4, dynamic and collaborative, pretty creative types, and um, but harder maybe to stick to it. So what I'd like us to do for the next few minutes is if you were whatever your strength one was, if it was collaborative, which we had a few here, right? Your first one that was collaborative, just you. I'm gonna we're gonna put we're gonna put our collaboratives and our dynamics together. Okay. Well, and you, right? Just three of you? That was you, right? Okay. So I'll have you all come over to this table for a minute. Yeah, that's complimentary. It's either schizophrenic or complimentary. It's one of the. Okay. And we'll take our common sense people. We'll have two tables of those and maybe two tables of the analytic people. So if you were strongest in the analytic, we'll go to these two tables over here. And if you were strongest in the common sense, we'll maybe do these two tables here. Well, by 1 point.
So this is common sense.
See what?
I was rushing to make sure I got all my numbers. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, there's. She was equal on all of them. I think you're very relational, but when it comes to teaching, you want to be very accurate. And so I think that's what's skewed. So yeah, you can go anyway. Yeah. Oh, let's see. Yours are about even too, aren't they? Yeah, but you're mhm. But your highest is well 13, 13, 14, 17, and 14. So you can either go to that table or you can go to what are you all? Common sense here, analytics. Um, why don't you go over there with them? Okay. According to your learning style, given we're going to play up your learning style and just see how you would approach this. We're going to imagine that you're going to teach a class to highlight that style. I want you to teach the Lord's Prayer how would you teach the Lord's Prayer according to your learning style preference? How would a common sense person teach the Lord's Prayer? How would a dynamic person teach the Lord's Prayer? How would an analytic do it? A collaborative, a common sense person. So just think about that for a minute.
Well, I mean, so it's only been in English for 300 or 400 years. I mean, it was paternoster for 1500. So, Hebrew, the Greek, the Latin, the. Well, I'm interested in hearing what the scholar here has to say. He's got to move to that other thing. One thing I do, parts of it that are not accentuated enough. Just parts that think about the way that the language is built. As again, it has been translated other languages, we miss really the military came from the foot stop. Do we miss that? That is an interesting. When did those stuff in that Bible? It's awesome. No, it's awesome. It's not always. It's also an ADD. If I'm sitting there and the sermon or whatever is going somewhere that loses me, off I go. Yeah. Back. How to teach. Yeah. How to teach. Because honestly, the average person. Right. No, but I think you can teach it. Yeah, you can help wrap it in a way. So you pick out key words. Here's what it says in the original language. You don't have to go through all the others. You can say, here's what it says in the original language, and here's what it means to say. But I think you'd also have to.
Where's, oh, I don't know. Lydia said that the babies were crying, so maybe she went and got her. I don't know. Okay. Well, both our Lydias were back there, so maybe they couldn't handle it. Yeah. All right, we'll stay at your tables for now. I want to hear we'll hear first from this table back here, which represents the collaborative, imaginative, dynamic learning style. How would someone like that maybe teach the Lord's Prayer?
The empty chair. Just so that the rest of the room won't see.
So I'm doing what now?
Just how would someone from that learning style, the collaborative and imaginative type, how might someone like that approach teaching the Lord's Prayer? So what did you all discuss?
I think we discussed pretty much. You may want to get other people involved in what you're doing so that you can tell them here's why you're doing it. And then from the dynamic side of it, because that was the other part here, was here's the results. So you get them to you answer the why by giving them the vision or the what are you going to become, what are you going to do with that. So
Right. Okay.
Kind of how we think, and pretty much addition there.
Yeah. So when you think of the Lord's Prayer, yeah, like your kingdom come, your will be done. It's like that would really hit that type of person. What is his kingdom going to become? And so that would be maybe the focus, and you're casting vision for that to say the Lord's Prayer. That would be your emphasis. Okay. Yeah. Let's move over to the analytics, which were back here, right? All of you all analytic. What
we talked about the probably go again factually. We'd look at uh, the ancient Greek, Aramaic, the original translations, see that we're getting it right, getting it correct.
Mm-hmm.
Going down, kind of went down that rabbit hole, and then we realized that then the discussion got to the point. Once we did that, we're only catching 20% of whoever we're trying to teach to.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to do something that's not our way of doing it, or else we're going to lose the other 80% of the class.
Right. But if you were, unless you were thinking about, wait, I only represent 20%, you would just keep going like you're going. You would just continue to fill in the details, breaking down all the verb tenses and whatever of the prayer itself. And so, yeah, that would be that approach. And if you went to seminary to study it, that's what you'd get. Okay, yeah, to do a full word analysis of it. Common sense to these two tables, right?
100% convinced I'm right that I'm not in that group. And this table, we're really not sure why you even posed the question, because we would just memorize it and be done with it. It's just common sense. We're going to memorize it.
Okay.
We're going to keep it simple, stupid, just like the military. Yes.
All right. What about you guys? Was there anything? I'll get it.
Joe was supposed to.
Okay, you can hand it to Joe.
Well, so first we said we were going to just memorize it.
Okay.
And then we decided you probably meant how would we like teach a lesson if we were trying to explain it. So we were just going to take it line by line, read a sentence, tell them what it meant. Read the next sentence, tell them what it meant.
Okay.
Until we were done.
Well, yeah, memorize it would be fine as well. But yeah, you could explain it. But it is sort of a common, I mean, Jesus did say this is how you pray. It's a very simple how-to, common sense kind of a thing. And so you would just pray it. The common sense people is, yeah, memorize it and pray it. And you wouldn't be as concerned with, how you connect with it or the feelings related to it or what it's supposed to become. It's like it just becomes part of your ritual. You're supposed to do it. So, all right. So good. You kind of see how maybe an extreme version would come at that. And now we'll take this next approach. So you can come back to your notes here. Thanks for talking it out. Yeah, you can go back just to where, or you can stay there just as long as you have your notes. You can mix it up and stay where you're at, or you can, just so you can write. You all can join another table. You didn't have to be a date night thing. You can. Oh, sorry. Huh. All right. So that's the challenge then, is that we have to come up with a first to know what the Bible means, and then to be able to come up with an aim. Last week we did that. We worked on an aim, which was how do you teach and then show that the person has learned. And if anyone has their notes from the beginning, go back to page 1, the very first page. You notice there's 2 numbered lists, 1 and 2, and then 1, 2, and 3. Those are all aims. So the whole first page of the very first day was what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. To better interpret Scripture by applying rules of interpretation, what we're going to do, how we're going to demonstrate that it's been done. better teach by applying rules of teaching. That's what we're at now, this part of it. And so every lesson needs that aim. So now you can go back to page 25. And page 25 is your Keep Forever page because this is the template that I've used for a few decades on teaching, preaching, etc. What I fill out that just helps me think through not only what the Bible means, but how can I relate that to people? Because the definition of Bible teaching, Destiny, you were here last week. What was, remember what we did? I picked up, made Jacob stand up, and what did I do? What did I say? Yeah, you bring them, one hand on each, bring them together for discipleship, to make disciples. And so as we aim for that, this is what I fill out as a little lesson planning template to make sure that I'm hitting other types of learners besides myself. So I would start out, who are my learners? If I didn't do this to you, I let you, when you were thinking about the Lord's Prayer, I could have said 5-year-olds, or I could have said inner city youth or nursing home, but you just kind of did it in general. But when you're actually teaching or leading a small group, I write up a little demographic of learners. Nehemiah isn't here tonight, but he started teaching a Bible study at lunch with, there was 3 guys, and they wanted to grow deeper in their faith, all believers, maturing believers. So they started going through the Sermon on the Mount, doing a lot of the analysis stuff. And then in the last couple weeks, all these other people have joined them. And so they moved to another room. And he told me, I think yesterday they had 42, 43 people. And most of them aren't believers. And so we were talking about strategically, your goal is completely different now. And so he's handing out these Bibles and people are asking questions. It's like, you're not just trying to grow deep with 2 other believers anymore. How does it change the way you're going to do what you're doing? So now they're, instead of just going through Matthew, they're doing some of Matthew, they're taking more questions, they're doing group work, and they're explaining what is the gospel over and over again. What does it mean to be saved? So yeah, what are your learners? What's the demographics? What's their basic needs, their spiritual maturity, etc.? And then the next one, the meaning of your passage, that was the first 4 weeks. Author's intentions, etc. And then this next thing I think of is, how do I bridge the meaning of the learners, the meaning of the passage, to the needs of the learners? How does the meaning reveal God's character and our calling? Those are the 2 things. When I go to Scripture, you do your analysis work, and regardless of how deep you go, like Curtis was talking, or if you're just going to take it kind of line by line, I'm looking for what is revealed about God's character and what is it saying about our calling. If I can remember those 2 things, I'll answer most of the things that need to be answered in terms of how do I address this. The challenge with our analytics is that there's just a lot of, we can keep going with details and never get to really what's God's character and what's our calling. The challenge with maybe the dynamic and the collaborative is they can go with vision without it really being informed by the meaning of the text. So we all have challenges. That's why the template's here to help us, keep us a little honest. So then you have an aim. Students will blank by blank, and you don't fill those blanks in. Those are what you keep blanked for you to say, what are the students going to do, and how am I going to make that? So as you're thinking about that, what do you want students to do? So if you turn back to right before you took the survey, I had up there, my students will apply learning styles by taking the survey and discussing how they fit into the Hookbook Looktook lesson plan. So that's my goal for today. That's my aim. So that's how I filled that out. Now this is for reviewing what we did last week. And so everybody here last week? Anyone new? Okay, good. Remember we had a hook, and the hook is how we start a lesson. How do I focus learners? Now we have some blanks here to fill out. And highlight real need. in an engaging way that ties them to the meaning of the passage. So all those imaginative learners that are asking, why do I need to know this? Their curiosity is satisfied at the very beginning. I focus those people at the beginning. The analytic and common sense people, they might say, what is this little thing that he's doing at the beginning to grab the attention? We're all ready for it. You don't need it. It's not for you. It's for the type of the people who are always asking the why questions, and it focuses all in. It might be something quick. Next week we'll throw a bunch of methods at that, but it might be something real quick, a question, and today it was the filling out a survey. And then I'll transition straight to the book portion, which is the scriptures, assuming we're doing Bible teaching. So how do I convey the meaning of a passage as it relates to the learners and determine what is need to know versus nice to know? And so for the analytic type, you do a real quick, you ask a rhetorical question, and then you go straight to a really, really long part of the content, and you can still overdo it by the amount of material. And so that's the hard question for a detail people is this need to know or nice to know? And how I draw that distinction is this helping me reveal the character of God to people or revealing the calling that people have to God? So when I would train young pastors who were analytic types, and they struggled because they kept doing all this Greek work in the pulpit, and they kept translating stuff, and then the people were it just doesn't affect. And I said, well, but I'm trying to he's trying to have a sense of credibility about what he's doing, that he's serious. And so I told him, I said, get together with a few other pastors or seminary students and talk about all this Greek stuff with them. But then when you go to your people, just, explain the passage without getting into that. That's why having an aim for each of these are so important. And here's something maybe you can write to the side, because I should have had something to it. If you don't have an intentional aim about what you want people to learn, other default aims will take over. One would be, I'm aiming to demonstrate the amount of study that I've done. That can be an aim that can just take over. Another aim is, I'm going to try to get through the whole thing in the allotted time. And that becomes my goal, my aim. And everything feeds into that. And some of these aims are tied to these styles here. Like the analytic is wanting to show that they've learned. If you're a collaborative, imaginative type, my aim is, by the end of the day, I hope the people like me. I mean, we all want people to like us, but again, if you don't have a stated aim of what you're trying to accomplish with other people, the default aim of, I want people to like me, I want to sound intelligent. What's that? I want to make people feel good. I want people to have a good time. I want people to get along. And so those all might be fine, but that's not why the teaching and learning environment exists. And so if you're not, that's why with me, it's the aims are really important, because that's the whole purpose of what you're doing. And all those other psychological, every insecurity you have in your soul will pop up, and that will become your motivation as you're with people, rather than I want to have one hand on the word, one hand on the person, and bring them together to make a disciple. So those aims are very important to have clarified. And so we go to the look. What was our visual aid for the look last week? Remember, I had an object. I had a fishing pole, and then I had a mirror. Yeah, because the important thing is that the look is them taking an internal look in themselves. I'm doing something in the lesson that creates space for the meaning to be internalized by the student. How is the original need, the hook, and the meaning, the book, working in the heart? And so be sure to give them time to process. And this is the common, most of us in here are common sense people. This is the common sense we're teaching to the common sense people here. How does this affect me? The so what of the whole thing, the so what, that's the common sense question. And then we transition to the took, the takeaway. And this is what learning style does this hit the strength of? Yeah, the dynamic, because the dynamic person is always looking for what can this become? And what can I become because of it? And so this is what takes place after the lesson. It's the accountability, the homework. And so whatever was internalized must shape us beyond the class time. And how will this lesson hold the student accountable for a testimony? It's one thing to have a good class, but for that person to have a testimony because they have followed up and obeyed what was taught in the class is priceless. A testimony, that you have a testimony. And so now that person who is the very collaborative group person who's always asking the why questions, if they were to teach just to their strength, they would just have kind of a rambling Q&A session the whole time, and it would never land anywhere. There wouldn't be any content to it. But if we all were to go through this process, the hook, book, look, took, we would teach to everybody's strength, and we would also challenge everyone in the area that they need to be challenged in. So you would be focused, then you would have the scripture, the content, you would internalize that, and then you would apply it in some way. And so that's the challenge, to pull that off. Sure. Analytic. I was very analytic, especially because I took this when I was in doctoral program. It's less that way now. But if you're a doc, if you're in a doctoral program, you're going to be there. Yeah. And so that's the challenge in with traditional schooling is the vast majority, the educational system is designed for the analytic type. And so if you find yourself not liking school, you're probably not that analytic type completely. But most of us, we're whole people, so we all have, a little bit of each of this in us. And depending upon what you're doing and what you're thinking about, if you're in your specialty of career, you might be very analytic it's like, no, this has to be done this way, So hopefully, if you have a very collaborative pharmacist, hopefully when he goes to fill your prescription, he's very analytic in what he's doing. So, we all have to have those areas where we have to perform in detail. Any other questions or comments on the lesson plan, learning styles? Okay. Yes, sir. Oh, that's right. I added that after I printed mine out. Let me make sure. Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. When I printed this out, I somehow missed this bottom part. So under your circle, our hook, book, look, took gives us structure to teach toward each style, strength, and weakness. It is our recipe for the creative process. We've had great food every night we've been here, and that's not random. There's some people that are recipe readers, other people They learned it on their own. But we have all the different, there's methods and there's aims and there's the sequencing and understanding the learner and the scripture, and all this goes together to form some kind of recipe for our teaching. And some people, and this is more the common sense analytic types, one of the things that bothers them about teaching or not wanting to teach whenever I talk about using different methods is they say, well, I'm not creative. Right? And others are very creative, but they don't have much structure or discipline to pull off the creativity in a fruitful way. And so I believe that everyone can teach well in any style. You just have to think about a recipe. When you first go to a kitchen, and you can't just randomly pull things out and mix them together and hope to have something. There's an order to it. You can't just randomly put stuff together. And so that next line there, it says, you can be creative if you prayerfully study the word and let it marinate in your soul. Creativity takes some time, a little planning. We have hobbies that take time, and good Bible teaching takes time. And so the content, I think of the word as like a great piece of meat. That's what the book of Hebrews refers to it as, the meat there. And meat needs to be marinated or smoked. I guess that would also be another option. But instead, we kind of like glazed things, like donuts. Donuts they have there's no nutritional value in them. And it's just sweet on the surface. It tastes good at first, but you're malnourished from that. And so when I think about Bible teaching as it relates to food, I believe God created us with an appetite for solid food. And we got to be careful that we're not sitting around just eating the glazed stuff that tastes good on the surface, but there's no meat to it. But the meat by itself, just a big hunk of meat, it's too much for us typically, or it's not pleasant. It's how do I flavor this in a way? And it's like, well, you need to marinate it. You need to smoke it. That takes time. And so Bible teaching takes some time. It's some investment. You can instead just buy curriculum that's already pre-done, and there's great curriculum out there, but it still takes some time because the curriculum writer doesn't know the people you're teaching. You do. So you're the one that still has to bridge those gaps. Joe? I'll have I go through this. Yeah, if you were to go back now and on Sunday, if you watch for it, you'll hear it. Yeah. It's more pronounced in teaching than preaching because when in teaching, I would stop and ask them. Preaching is kind of like playing golf. I'm doing all the activity. And so maybe I hit it way out there, but I'm the one that has to go get it if I went out of bounds. Or, teaching is like playing tennis. And so you get to go back and forth, and you get to react and respond, and you have to move where that person is hitting it back to you. So Q&A, discussions, all these teaching methods is the difference between tennis and golf. And in tennis, you really notice the movement of people a lot more. And the hint down there is, The Wizard of Oz. And so another guy years ago made a little clip, and it's one of the reasons, I don't know, is one of my favorite movies growing up. You waited all year for it to come on one night a year, and it hits every part of the human soul. So Dorothy ends up in Munchkinland, and the first thing she has to do is what? Follow the yellow brick road. There's no such thing as a yellow brick road in her experience. As a matter of fact, the movie starts out in black and white. And so it's yellow, it's different, it's alluring, and it creates a path to the goal. And that's like the hook. The hook is get on the yellow brick road. And then what's the next part of the plan? The hook, book, right? So you're going, now I say book, look, and took, but we're hitting the head, the heart, and the hands. That's what they match up to. And so the first person she encounters is the scarecrow, The brain, right? He's looking for a brain. Ironically, he's the smartest one in the movie, but that's the cleverness of the whole story is that goes there and there's the brain, and then you go on to the Tin Man who represents the heart, and then the lion is the courage to act, to do. And so if you can, 6 months from now or a year from now, you've got a little small group and you want to help lead that, or you're going to fill in for a Sunday school class, or you're going to do something. If you can remember the Wizard of Oz, you can hopefully remember, oh, yeah, and I need to get them on a path to a goal and hit the head, the heart, and the hands with the Bible in some way to the learners. So that's just a helpful little memory device. Any other questions on that? All right. Let's go then to page 26. We'll hit some methods. And the first one we want to do is questions, because all good teaching is going to start with the questions that you ask. Two kinds of questions. Convergent questions have one answer. So if you just know yes or no, is it going to happen? So if I ask Curtis, what's the capital of Florida? Tallahassee. Yes. He either knew that or he didn't. He wasn't going to guess his way to that. It just took a while to go through, and it's in there, and you got it. It could be yes, it could be no, but there's one answer that we're going for. Most of the questions you've had in your life in school have been of this type. They're the worst kind of questions for learning, but they're the easiest to grade. And so that's why they're the most prevalent. Divergent means there's many possible answers. And so any question that starts out with why do you feel that way? Why do you think that Jesus said this to the disciples? And so these are discussion starting questions. That doesn't mean there isn't a wrong answer. Some people say, well, is there a wrong answer? Yes. There's still plenty of wrong answers. And so here's what we'll do at your tables. I want you to come up with these next 3 lines. Surface questions for more information but no depth. Why and when would you use those as you teach? Questions that go from specific to general, or vice versa, a question that is very general, but then you stack questions and make them specific. And how do you ask deep probing questions without being scary? So at your tables, pick 1 or 2 of those and talk those up for a couple minutes, and we'll see what you come up with. You big dummy. Okay. All right. We'll go around and see which of these did you have the best discussion about? Um, let's let's go back. We'll go back to our far right table. Anyone that you wanted to talk about of those three? Yeah, you can speak for the group. You don't have to speak on, but
We kind of talked a little bit about
yeah, just
I mean, I would say from the general to specific, we talked about how easy it is. There's different people in the group. Some would be more comfortable speaking about the general, and others comfortable speaking about the specific. So
okay.
it's our job to pull that out of people.
So you have can you think of an example of someone who's more comfortable with the specific? What kind of specific you think someone would be more comfortable with? Okay, because you're giving more detail. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah. So he gave a very specific answer that then could have a lot of questions behind that. Okay. And so if we were talking about general or specific in terms of personal information, that might not that might be a completely different way to look at it. Um, all right. Let's you guys here, you two. What
So questions in the question specific to general. And so I just did I just wrote sex ed down for the first one because I had to do that for 7 years for middle school kids. So the first thing I had to figure out was what did they already know? And so we would just kind of start pictures and like who knows what this is, who knows what that is. There was no depth to it. It was just where am I starting at so I can relate.
Okay.
If you lay ground rules down for middle school. And then the second one, I actually put going from specific to general or vice versa. Actually, I wrote Charlie Kirk in a different reason because I think a lot of times if you're having a persuasive conversation, sometimes you jump in on the specific and you need to back out and get him to say, "What's a woman? What's this? What's?" And he would just big
Okay.
picture it and then go back in. And so sometimes just to find the common ground first, because if you can't even agree on that general part of the thing, or when does life begin? So you can't, he would debate about abortion. Let's back it all the way up. If we can't agree on this part, we're certainly not going to agree down here. So you have to go
Right.
back from specific to general and back.
Okay. Yeah, a good discussion leader and a good debater can see where they're at and know when to back up and make it broader to where maybe sometimes I think a good discussion leader is trying to find the common ground to move forward. Good debater. Others are trying to do the gotcha by Socrates was famous for he would ask a question. The ancient Greeks would debate, and he would say, "What is virtue?" And no matter who, and someone would answer, and he would always talk that person into a contradiction. He just had a way to make everybody look like a fool. Just as sport, he would just do that for sport. The to practice rhetoric and debate, and he would always be able to get everyone in the position they didn't want to be in by using questions. But yeah, great discussion leaders, debaters. Hopefully, they have because we're all searching for the truth, and we use questions to hopefully arrive to where we can arrive at the truth. It's not about just that person or you. It's about how can we both approach the truth and see it clearly. So, all right. Well, thanks. Thanks, guys. Someone else? Different question or a different take on one of those?
Well, and that'd be wrong. The surface questions, we're talking about the, we've mentioned the fact that sometimes it's to find out where the student is, their knowledge. Yeah, their knowledge, and whether is that way you know where to start yourself.
Yeah.
You had another.
It also feedback lets you know if it's something that you were teaching. Did you deliver it or did they miss it?
Right.
You need
Hmm.
feedback wrong.
Hmm.
Maybe it's not. You gave it in a verbal manner that the different styles maybe have to come in from a different style to get them to comprehend the
Yeah. Do you need to reteach?
Mine
Or-
was in the beginning, his process after teaching some.
Mhm.
We said the same thing, only different aspects.
Yeah. So you're trying to see where some of it, you're trying to see where the students are. And then if you know where they are, then you can re-strategize for deeper questions, but your teaching has to go toward that deeper question. And so whenever we talk about writing the aims, why are you here? I want students to, it's like, what kind of questions do I have to frame together to see that they have indicated that they have met that goal that I want them to get at? And if our goal is just what's the capital of Florida, or who was the third apostle called, if it's just memory things, we have easy questions we can ask for that. We can just do quizzes for those, but for adults, we really don't, we're not getting to where we're making disciples by just those questions. So we have to keep going deeper. Anybody talk about this, how to ask deep probing questions without being scary? Okay, we'll come back to you then.
It basically just talked about being relatable.
Okay.
Like, you have to be able to open up a little bit. Like, Gabe brought up how we did that exercise last week or a few weeks ago, where we talked about our weaknesses and strengths. But then,
I think it was a few weeks ago when we talked about writing down good traits for Bible teachers.
Oh, yeah.
So you started with a simple question, and then you led into a deeper question of what are your good and bad traits. And then Gabe was saying that you could even it says you could do vice versa. Vice versa would be going from simple to more in-depth questions, and then back to simple questions to really drive it home and get back to the picture, back to the beginning of what you're trying to teach.
Yes.
That's what I got.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. It's nice when those can come back, like when you have a hook um, that creates that sense of need or focuses that, and then you go to your book part and you have them make that inward look, and then your last takeaway is tied right back into how do you get that need. That's the cycle that should happen. It's beautiful when that can come all together. People see that. Anything else? Go ahead.
I also talked about how, like, maybe us answering that question first, but then I look at the next thing to avoid and it says answering your own questions. So that might not be it.
Oh, no, no. All right. How do we ask deep questions without being scary?
Letting them know that they that the genuine face concern and trust. Curtis mentioned that it takes time to build all that, which I agree with, but also goes to trauma and foster care. I don't have time for that. And then I was also thinking, like, with the Charlie Kirk thing, each time you're thinking spiritually either. So sometimes you do have to just, but if they don't give you, maybe you're looking for something specific, you might have to ask questions around and use your best judgment to kind of be, again, being relatable,
Mhm.
real place of love and concern.
Okay.
sometimes. You know,
Okay. Yeah. And part of the challenge is sometimes the role between teacher and counselor is like in some way you talk about foster care, it's like you're almost crossing over to a counseling type of a thing. But yeah.
I was gonna say just on the deep probing questions without being scary. 'Cause I have to do that a lot. What I do, and
Hmm.
but generally you either preface it, follow it with here's why I'm asking, just to let them know why you're asking, because you just have to ask personal questions sometimes.
Mhm.
Look, I'm not a creep. I'm asking you this because it's, and here's what I'm going,
Sure.
here's what I'm looking at
Sure.
in my head, and
Mhm.
I just have to rule this out. And so you have to ask a lot of personal questions, especially if they're young patients. Like, here's why I'm asking you this. This is what I'm concerned about. If you preface it, then you go into your question.
Okay. There's also some generational stuff here. You know, our parents or grandparents or whoever, you never talked about certain things. You know, you wouldn't talk about religion, politics at the dinner table. The younger generation is much more, I don't know if this is the online thing or whatever, but it's amazing if you ask a deep question that they have no shame. I mean, you can almost ask anything to teenagers today, and they seem to be very, very open about that. And it's a generational thing, which is, it can kind of open up that creepy box for some, but at the same time, for ministers, for reaching the next generation, you don't have to have weeks or years of building small talk, and you can just go in and ask something pretty deep, and they're pretty receptive to that. So, um, all right. Well, thank you all. Real quick on questions to avoid. I know we just got a couple minutes here. Um, this is when teaching. And if you're trying to really ask good questions to get a discussion going, we'll assume we won't get to our discussion portion here, but a lot of teachers answer their own questions. They ask a question, and there is a second of silence, and then they give the answer, which trains the class to never answer, which is number two, rhetorical questions. Just don't do them. I do them when I preach because I know no one's going to answer them, and I'm trying to get people to think. But in a classroom setting, I don't ask rhetorical questions. I just don't find them helpful. And because then it's making people, is this rhetorical? Can I, so it's like every time you ask a question, expect an answer, wait for an answer. And my challenge in asking questions is this next one, multiple stacking of questions. So what's wrong with the world today? How long has it been that way? What can we do about it? It's like, well, which one do you want me to answer? So that's a challenge, is that because we're kind of thinking out loud, you're verbally processing, and you just start stacking questions upon questions, and that does the same thing. It freezes people up. Where you have a clear question, and that's it. They're there. Too broad, too narrow, that should speak for itself. Sometimes if you don't get an answer, it's because your question was way too broad, or sometimes it was way too specific, and they can't get it, which then leads into guess what I'm thinking questions, to where it just becomes this, it doesn't go anywhere. Yeah. Or I'm looking for this specific, like, well, I probably didn't set something up well if I'm having to play guess what I'm thinking. And then ignoring responses is another challenge. Is that, did you ask the question to start a discussion, or why are you asking that? Do that you address the responses that you get? And then this last one, we'll close with this, reacting harshly to wrong answers, or just answers that you thought, I can't believe this person didn't know that. It's like you shouldn't be shocked. Yeah, it's like uh, a, a friend of mine was leading a Bible study, and he had someone who didn't know anything about church, and he'd showed up, and they'd gone through the whole Gospel of John in the very last class. And the whole Gospel of John is that Jesus is God. That's the whole gospel. And at the very end of the class, this guy says, You mean that Jesus is God? And it's like, that's what they've been doing. And it's like everyone wanted to laugh, but he was able to jump in real quick and said, You got it. you summed up the whole book. And he just affirmed him. It's like it wasn't a dumb question. It was like, wow, you really captured everything we've done. Yes, Jesus is God. Where he said, it's real easy to just to laugh those off, but um, so harshly or to be embarrassed by it. Especially, it's one thing if they're doing a test and they're doing something in writing and you criticize that, but in the classroom, it's like if you want to shut down that. I had my first philosophy professor was kind of like Socrates. No matter, she take a controversial topic and what side are you on, and no matter what side you chose, the professor would beat you down with the other side. And we figured, not mean, just that's what philosophy is partially. But after a couple weeks, it's like no one's saying anything. And she even kicked the whole class out one day. Everybody leave like an hour early just because, like, no, we're not saying it, because we know what you're doing. You're just flexing you've done all this stuff, and so that you don't, the questions aren't about power plays, or they're not about showing what you know, but creating the discussion. All right. So we will next week we will start out with do a little role play on discussions and leading discussions, because the vast majority of our teaching in Bible studies is about leading a discussion. So we will start there. But Larry, could you close us in a prayer?